Hey guys, I'm going to be reading your sources for your writing this week. Walking Tall. How did Ruby Bridges make history? Don't be afraid. That's what Ruby Bridges' mother told her on November 4th, 1960. Little Ruby listened carefully to the advice. Soon, four United States federal court marshals, or officers, arrived at the Bridges family home in New Orleans, Louisiana, to drive the first grader to William Frantz Public School. A screaming mob was waiting. People stood near the building shouting. Here's an image of Ruby Bridges entering her school in 1960. Ruby held her head high. With the marshal surrounding her, the 6-year-old walked into the school and into history books. That morning, Ruby became one of the first African Americans to attend an all white elementary school in the South. For a long time, parts of the United States were segregated or separated by race. Under law, black children could not attend the same public schools as white children. People of different races also had to use separate public restrooms and drinking fountains. U.S. leaders worked hard to end segregation. They wanted all Americans to have civil rights. Civil rights are the rights to be treated equally. In 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. The case was Brown versus the Board of Education. By the year 1960, however, many southern cities, including New Orleans, were still not following the court's rulings. That prompted a federal court to take action in New Orleans. It ordered the city to desegregate its public schools. Ruby Bridges was one of the first students to lead the way. School days. Ruby made it inside William Frantz Public School that first day. However, there was so much uproar that she didn't make it to class. From the principal's office, Ruby watched as angry parents pulled their children out of school. On her second day, Ruby met her teacher, Barbara Henry. By then, so many kids had been removed from the school that Ruby was Henry's only student. The pair worked one-on-one for the whole year. Mrs. Henry was one of the nicest teachers I ever had, Bridges told WR News. She made school fun for me. Here is an image of Bridges when she was reunited with her teacher, Barbara Henry, in 1998. Outside the building, people continued to protest. Others, though, believed everyone should have civil rights. By the end of the year, crowds began to dwindle or decrease. When Ruby returned to school for second grade, there were no more protesters. Many of the other students had returned. Building bridges. By the late 1960s, most schools in the United States were no longer segregated, thanks to the efforts of civil rights workers. Other laws were passed that improved life for African Americans. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, for example, helped protect African Americans' rights to seek jobs. Bridges never had to attend a segregated school. She graduated from high school and continued her studies in business school. Today, Bridges speaks to her kids about the importance of treating one another equally. She has never forgotten her experience at William Frantz Public School, and she shares details about her first day there in her speeches. I wasn't really afraid, Bridges told WR News. I didn't really know what was going on at the time, and I loved school. The Little Rock Nine. Here is a picture also of Ruby Bridges. Before Ruby Bridges, there was Little Rock Nine. They were 9 African American students in Little Rock, Arkansas. On September 4th, 1957, the students attempted to begin classes at the all-white Central High School, but the governor of Arkansas and the angry mob surrounding the school prevented them from entering. Finally, President Dwight D. Eisenhower took action. He sent U.S. troops to protect the students, and they finally began classes. High school was far from easy for the group, but some of them went on to graduate. In 1999, Congress awarded the Little Rock Nine the Congressional Gold Medal for their bravery. How Ruby made history. How does it feel to make history? WR News student reporter Kaylin Ray recently asked Ruby Bridges. Kaylin Ray, how does it feel to know that you are part of U.S. history? Ruby Bridges, I'm very proud of that fact. My mother was really happy about my being able to attend that school. My father was more concerned about my safety. Kaylin Ray, what was your first day at William Frantz Public School like? Ruby Bridges, my first day I spent sitting in the principal's office, so it was very confusing. Kaylin Ray, what was it like to meet your teacher, Mrs. Henry, again many years later? Ruby Bridges, I was really excited about meeting her again because she was a very important part of my life that had been missing for a long time. Here's our second source. Honoring King. Americans pay tribute to a leader's legacy. For many Americans, Martin Luther King Jr. Day isn't just a day off from school or work. They will make it a day on and participate in community service projects in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Here's a picture of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressing a group of followers. A great leader. King, who was alive from 1929 to 1968, was a famous civil rights leader. When King was growing up, the South was segregated or separated by race. Black people did not have the same rights as white people. Under the law, they were not allowed to attend the same schools as white people and had to sit in the back seats of buses. Black people also had to use separate restrooms and drinking fountains. When King was older, he worked to change those unjust laws. During the 1950s and 1960s, he gave speeches and organized peaceful marches and protests. Beginning in 1955, King led the famous Montgomery bus boycott. For 381 days, African Americans boycotted or refused to use public buses in the Alabama city. A year later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that segregation on buses was illegal. King gained national attention from the boycott, and in 1963 delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. He told a crowd of more than 200,000 people in Washington, D.C., that his dream was for all people to be treated fairly and equally under the law. As a result of his work, civil rights laws were passed. Those laws protect the rights of all Americans. A day of service. Many people celebrate King's legacy on Martin Luther King Jr. Day with parades and other events. The legacy of a leader is something he or she has accomplished that would benefit future generations. For King, that meant making the world a better place. Thousands more honor King by cleaning parks, volunteering at homeless shelters, and participating in other community service projects. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve, King once said. By taking part in community service projects, Americans are able to keep the leader's dream alive. A civil rights hero, Martin Luther King Jr., January 15, 1929, born in Atlanta, Georgia. August 28, 1963, delivers his I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. December 10, 1964, becomes the youngest person to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. April 4, 1968, is assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. January 20th, 1986, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, first observed as a national holiday.